Hey there, curious minds, and welcome to the deep dive. We take fascinating sources and basically pull out the key nuggets of knowledge just for you. Today, we're going on this incredible journey way back in time, like tens of thousands of years. We're asking a really fundamental question. How did our ability to pay attention actually evolve? You know, the kind you need to tie your shoes or drive a car or even get good at something complex like, say, archery. And maybe even more interestingly, how might that ability have been different in our ancient relatives, the Neanderthals and Denisovans?
It's a really compelling question. And what's so fascinating now is how researchers they're blending archaeology with cutting-edge neurogenetics, looking for answers in ways we just couldn't before.
Exactly. So our mission today, we're diving into a recent neurogenetic study by Dr. Marlize Lombard, just published in the Journal of Archaeological Science. And we're also pulling in insights from a related piece, Ancient Attention, Hominin Brain Differences in Focus. It's a real deep dive into these hidden brain structures that might hold the secrets to our unique way of paying attention. So yeah, what makes our brains uniquely attentive, and how does this new work challenge how we usually think about attention? Let's unpack it.
Okay, so Dr. Lombard's work starts with this really powerful idea. Making and using tools, anything from a simple hammer stone to, a complex bow and arrow, or even just imagining how to improve something, it all needs intense focus, attention. So in a way, every archaeological artifact we find is like a record of ancient human attention.
Yeah, and that brings up a really important point, doesn't it? If attention is so critical for tool use and also for things like working memory and fluid intelligence, basically, solving new problems, then understanding how it evolved is absolutely central to understanding us. It really is a kind of neurological and evolutionary bottleneck. It shapes so many other cognitive skills.
Okay, but how on earth do you study attention in ancient brains? I mean, all we have are fossils, right? The standard model, the attention network theory, it breaks attention down into what? Alerting, orienting, and executive attention.
That's right, alerting, orienting, executive control.
And it usually links those functions to bits of the cortex, like the frontoparietal areas, but fossils don't tell us much about the deep brain stuff.
Exactly. And this is where Lombard's really clever neurogenetic triangulation approach comes in. It's quite ingenious, actually. She carefully cross-referenced three completely different sets of data. First, genes in us, modern humans, that are already known to be linked to attention network theory from a recent study. Second, she looked at genes with high-frequency, non-synonymous changes. And that's key. These changes alter the protein so they can actually change function. She compared modern human genomes to the available Neanderthal and Denisovan ones. And third, she focused on genes that are mostly expressed in the human brain, what she calls brain-elevated genes.
Wow, okay, that sounds like a really rigorous way to connect the dots between genes, brains, and behavior preserved in archaeology. So what popped out? What was the big reveal?
Well, what really stood out was this specific set of 18 genes. And these genes pointed towards 7 particular brain regions, plus some key white matter pathways. The idea is these represent variations in how attention developed differently in Homo sapiens, Denisovans, and Neanderthals after they split from their common ancestor, maybe around 600,000 years ago.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the regions weren't the ones you'd necessarily predict from the standard attention theories, were they?
Not at all. That's the surprising part. Most of the brain regions weren't the usual cortical suspects. They were deeper subcortical interconnectivity hubs, like crucial relay stations deep inside. So this suggests the basic machinery for alerting, orienting, executive attention that was probably already there in our common ancestor. But after the split, the way we and they paid attention likely developed differences in, say, the robustness of the connections, the speed, the overall efficiency of these deeper, older structures.
Ah, okay. So it's less about building totally new attention centers and more about optimizing the existing infrastructure, making the connections better.
Precisely. Better, faster, more efficient pathways rather than brand new modules. That seems to be the story emerging here.
Okay, let's dive into these surprising subcortical areas then, because, yeah, some of them we tend to think of as more, well, basic. First up.
Indeed. Let's start with the brainstem. Conventionally, yeah, we think basic unconscious stuff, the reptile brain almost. But this study, it flags 12 genes linked to its development and attention. 12.
Okay, so why does that matter? What's the twist?
Well, the brainstem isn't just basic. It acts as this crucial gateway for bottom-up regulation of social attention, especially in infants. And it has really extensive connections throughout the cortex. The pons, for example, part of the brainstem, it's a major hub for sensory prediction, sending motor plans. It helps with smooth eye movements, filtering sounds selectively, rapidly learning about threats. It's deeply involved. So variation here could have been really important for learning complex tool behaviors and motor skills, far from primitive in this context.
Fascinating. A basic region doing complex attentional work. Okay, what else? The cerebellum also popped up with 11 genes.
Ah, the cerebellum. Another one often just labeled motor control, right? Balance, movement. But this research, and lots of other work actually, shows its deep links to cognition. It helps with motor learning that needs precise timing. Think throwing a spear accurately, or maybe later, archery. And what's really striking is how it ballooned in size along with the cerebral cortex during human evolution. It got bigger, more bulging in Homo sapiens around 100,000 to 35,000 years ago. Some researchers even think this cerebellar specialization was key to our advanced technology. It helps optimize attentional control for both action and thought. It might handle some regulation automatically, freeing up our conscious mind or central executive for more creative thinking, for that wondering, as one researcher put it.
A motor brain that helps us think and imagine. I like that. That's a real shift in perspective. Okay, next. The postcentral gyrus, 8 genes. Sensory processing.
Exactly. Parietal lobe. Somatosensory integration processing touch, body position. Crucial for hand grip, visual attention, even social touch. What's compelling is that it lights up uniquely during tool making, especially in expert flip-nappers. We even see hints that early Neanderthals had increased development here too. But then, Homo sapiens endocasts, those brain case casts, show an enlargement here later on. It suggests changes linked to selective, focused, sustained attention, maybe even social attention.
Okay, and then the thalamus. With 8 genes, this one feels maybe a bit more expected, the brain's big relay station.
Yeah, that's fair. It's often called the gateway to the mind, sits right on top of the brainstem, connects to almost everywhere. But it's more than just relaying sensory info. It's absolutely key for consciousness, memory, attention. One hypothesis is it helps us make cross-modular conceptual combinations, basically mashing different ideas together to innovate. And its central location probably got a boost from our more rounded globular brain shape, letting it connect really strongly to areas like the precuneus, which is vital for complex two-handed tasks. Think bow hunting. Integration is key.
Makes sense. What about emotions? They drive attention so much. The amygdala is next, 7 genes. Any surprises there?
Absolutely. The amygdala, yes, core part of the social brain circuitry. But here's a key thing. Humans seem to have a unique distribution of serotonin-related neurons there. This impacts social behavior and how we allocate attention based on emotion. Plus, it fires up when we face novel problems. It's part of the brain's novelty detection system. So, genetic tweaks here after the split could have really changed how different groups responded to new social or technical challenges, how they felt about them, and where they directed their focus as a result.
That connects emotion and attention in a really interesting evolutionary way. Okay, then the precentral gyrus, 7 genes. Another motor area.
Yep, primary motor cortex. Controls voluntary movement. Works closely with the postcentral gyrus we just talked about. And again, fascinatingly, it shows direct activation during stone tool making. That direct link to the archaeology of attention. But it's also involved in spatial attention, getting ready to move that preparatory attention reading gaze, staying focused. It's part of the salience network too, helping figure out what's important in the environment to guide what we do next.
Okay, and finally, rounding out this tour of the inner brain, the basal ganglia. 6 genes. What's their role in attention?
Right, the basal ganglia. These are the largest subcortical structures, crucial for fine-tuning movements. But there's evidence suggesting human basal ganglia have increased synaptic plasticity, more capacity for learning and adapting at the neuron level compared to other primates. And critically for attention, they seem to modulate selective attention by inhibiting irrelevant stuff, like the brain's filter or bouncer. They might also regulate the rhythms of attention, like how often we shift our eyes. Differences in their development are linked to attention deficits today, suggesting evolutionary changes were really important here, even if we can't see those details in fossils.
Okay, so we've got this suite of deep, interconnected hubs doing more complex attentional work than maybe we thought. But how do they all talk to each other effectively? This is where white matter comes in, right?
Exactly. White matter is the glue. It's the brain's massive network of nerve fibers, the axons. Think of it as the wiring, the information superhighway. It's what allows for rapid communication and synchronization between all these different areas we've discussed. And evolutionarily, its volume increases hugely as brains get bigger. In us, modern humans, it's about 35% of the brain. Compare that to maybe 9% in a tiny pygmy marmoset.
Wow, 35%, that's huge.
It really is. And it suggests that our more globular, rounded skull shape might actually reflect a big expansion of white matter and these subcortical structures, not just the cortex expanding.
So it's not just about having powerful processing units, but having a super fast network connecting them, like upgrading from dial-up to fiber optics for the whole brain.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
Exactly. We see white matter changing in monkeys learning tool use, in humans learning to nap stone tools. How well it develops in childhood strongly correlates with cognitive skills like working memory, reading. And remember those 18 genes. 2 of them are involved in making the myelin sheath, that fatty insulation around axons that speeds up nerve impulses dramatically and stops signal leakage.
Ah, so it's literally about the quality and speed of the connections, not just where attention happens, but how fast and reliably the messages get around.
Absolutely. White matter integrity affects all sorts of attention-shifting focus, inhibiting distraction, spatial awareness, and we know that conditions like ADHD are often linked to differences or reductions in white matter integrity. So basically, the complex, flexible attention we experience just wouldn't be possible without these incredibly dense and efficient white matter tracks connecting everything up. They're the unsung heroes.
This whole picture really turns the traditional view kind of on its head, doesn't it? It suggests our unique attentional abilities might be less about inventing new brain areas and more about supercharging the connections between existing, deeper ones.
That's the core of Lombard's hypothesis, yes. That after the split from our common ancestor, the evolutionary pressure shifted. Maybe it wasn't so much about selecting for brand new functional networks for attention anymore. Instead, it became about developing more robust, faster, more efficient relay hubs and pathways within the existing system. And this doesn't mean one group was inherently better, just different. Their attentional landscapes might have evolved in quantitatively and qualitatively different ways.
Can you give an example of how that might have looked, practically speaking?
Well, maybe Denisovans, for instance, evolved attentional systems prioritizing strong links between selection and control, suited to their environment. Neanderthals might have emphasized enhancing control over motor, visual, and auditory attention, maybe perfect for their hunting or crafting techniques. This could mean less emphasis on those hyper-fast, super-efficient relay hubs that seem to be more of a Homo sapiens specialization. And maybe that specialization gave us an edge in certain kinds of innovation or complex cumulative culture building.
That makes sense. Different paths, all successful for a very long time. But okay, this is cutting-edge stuff, merging different fields. There must be caveats, right? Limitations.
Oh, absolutely. It's crucial to be cautious. As evolutionary neuroscientist Cedric Bucks points out, we can't just leap from finding a genetic difference to assuming a specific cognitive difference in attention. Not without experiments, which are impossible here. Genes often do multiple things, pleiotropy it's called. And a big one, our modern human genetic database is enormous, thousands of people. The ancient DNA, we only have high-quality genomes for a handful of Neanderthals and Denisovans. That introduces potential bias.
Right, so these findings are incredibly suggestive. They offer fantastic new framework, but they're not the final word. More like a really well-supported hypothesis, a scaffold for future work.
Exactly. Lombard herself stresses this. It's not about proving Homo sapiens were uniquely better in some simple way. It's about exploring the variation, the different evolutionary paths attention might have taken. But despite the caveats, the careful triangulation method does strongly highlight these specific genes and regions as places where important changes likely occurred. Those changes could have made parts of the modern human attention network more efficient, potentially enabling more complex technologies, different ways of thinking.
What an incredible journey into the archaeology of attention. Today we've seen how this neurogenetic deep dive points towards something fascinating. Maybe what makes Homo sapiens attention distinct isn't brand new brain structures, but rather the enhanced speed, robustness, and efficiency of these deeper subcortical hubs and the white matter highways connecting them.
It really does shift the focus, doesn't it? From just the cortex to these deeper, ancient structures as major players in our cognitive evolution. It lets us think about how subtle genetic changes, invisible in fossils, might have translated into really significant differences in attentional capacity, ultimately shaping our tools, our societies, our minds.
So here's a thought to leave you with. The next time you find yourself easily juggling tasks or focusing intensely on something tricky or even just letting your mind wander and imagine new possibilities, Consider this. If our ancestors developed these more robust attentional relay hubs, these faster neural connections, how might that deep ancient shift have shaped not just toolmaking, but the very fabric of our cumulative culture, our ability to plan, to innovate, to imagine futures? What aspects of your own attention right now might be echoes of those ancient upgrades humming away deep inside your brain? Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. We really hope this exploration has given you a fresh perspective on the sheer complexity and the deep ancient roots of the human mind.